Hello. In this video, I want to talk to you about the original performance conditions of Greek plays and focus in particular on one extremely important element of those performance conditions, the stage building or the skene, which tends to be disregarded in your textbooks, but which had an enormous importance in terms of interpretation, in terms of how these plays created meaning. Now, if we look at the Pearson textbook on Drama and Theatre A level, on the section where the original performance conditions of Antigone are discussed, we read that there was a wooden building at the back of the space that was known as the skene. Very good. This area was the main entrance and exit and was decorated to reinforce the plot. Okay, we will see how far this is accurate. Then moving on a few pages later in the same book, on the original performance conditions of Lysistrata, we actually read nothing about the skene. The skene does not appear at all. This is actually really surprising because one cannot stress enough how important the skene was for the meaning created and conveyed in Aristophanes' Lysistrata. Okay, let's think first of all about this characterization, wooden building. Okay, it is correct. It was a temporary wooden construction and it was erected by contractors for every festival. Okay, these are perishable materials, hence no wooden building has survived today. However, their foundations have survived, in particular the holes that were used for the pillars that would keep this wooden building erect. And based on these archaeological excavations, we know that this wooden building would have been 18 to 20 meters wide, 3 to 4 meters high, and with a set of double doors that created an opening of around 5 to 6 meters wide. Only the height is by supposition, but you can see, based on the scholarship that exists, that the skene would have been a dominant presence in the original performance conditions. And actually, not just physically dominant, but also, and more importantly, as I will try to show you in this and in a series of videos, in relation to how Greek plays created meaning. Since the publication of these archaeological reports, some artists have created impressions of the theatre of Dionysus in the 5th century, and you can get an idea of what the space would have looked like and how large the skene would have been in relation to the rest of the space. You can see that it is even longer than the orchestra itself and the playing area itself. Another sketch here. Multiple sketches can actually show you how we cannot really exactly reconstruct what the space would have looked like. So this kind of multiplicity of approaches can help. So the theatrical space for which Greek drama was composed comprised this skene, okay, and it was as long as this image shows, with a huge double door. The main area, as the textbook tells you, for exits and entrances from the interior, the only area for exits and entrances from the interior, the two side entrances, the parodoi, and the playing area at the front, the orchestra, which was not circular. Now, in relation to the painted set that the textbook mentions, we know, and we have a lot of reasons to believe, that the skene was actually presented as quite rudimentary for the entirety of the 5th century. Almost certainly, there was a very minimally painted set in the 5th century, and perhaps there was none at all, actually, in the earlier plays in Aeschylus. And the reasons for this were not just practical. They were because the focus of the dramaturgy of these plays was on showing this space as an interior space. Okay? And in fact, this was now the only interior space that was on this theatre space. I'm sure you have seen pictures of the Theatre of Dionysus as it is today. This is actually one of the earliest representations of the Theatre of Dionysus. What I want you to take from here is that the Theatre of Dionysus, where most of the plays that we have survived in their entirety today would have been performed, and you can see that it was an open air theatre. And here I have superimposed the skene taken from a different sketch, just to show you how large it could have been. However, I want to use this other image of the theatre of Syracuse, which has got color and which shows you, in fact, the light that would have flooded the space in during the spring or late winter, when the performances would have taken place. Now, why is this important? Again, because in the original conditions of Greek theatre, the skene interior would have been the only space that was not flooded by natural light. It would have been the space of darkness. Okay, this is very important. The idea of darkness is very important for a genre like Greek tragedy. We will see how it is also for Greek comedies, but let's start with tragedy. Now, the interior is the theatrical representation of the important idea of darkness in these plays. So it has a huge metaphorical power. You may have heard from some of your teachers that in Greek theatre there was an important contrast between the inside and the outside. So the inside captured the private, the outside captured the public. But I think it is far more important to think of the inside as the dark private, okay, the unknown and unseen dark private, as opposed to the outside, which is supposed to be what we see, what we know, the lit, the illuminated outside. Now, why is this important? We're dealing with Greek tragedy, and Greek tragedy is obsessed with families, especially dysfunctional families. So the dark space of the skene, which often represents, the house, usually the estate of these elite families, is the space that engenders, that hides the family's past and its dark secrets. Think here perhaps of the house in Antigone. This is a house that has a really dark past. Often in other tragedies, we see this dark interior as the embodiment of a family's dark psychopathology. Other ideas that are attached to this dark interior are the family line with a succession of generations, and often this succession comes with quite significant conflict, and even blooded conflict over power and wealth. And also the ancestors and the dead. These may be deceased, but they very often inform the psyche of the family at the moment. We see often the so-called family curse, for those of you who have read more widely on Greek tragedy, as embedded in the interior. We also see characters walking towards the interior, and we know that they're going to commit suicide, okay, as for example Eurydice in Antigone. The interior there becomes a space of death, and even Hades. And we see that actually in almost all plays. How the interior has connotations of a space of death and the underworld. Another area that we see associated with the interior is an individual's mind, their dark, suppressed, world, something very applicable to the Bacchae, as I will show in a different video, or even the body. And this is where Lysistrata, although it is a comedy, but draws extensively on tragedy, where it is a comedy, but you see that the interior of the skene captures the interior of a woman's body that, through the sex drive, is prevented from being penetrated. All of these ideas are extremely well developed in the Oresteia of Aeschylus, which I often say that is fundamental for understanding other Greek drama, including both tragedy and comedy, but they're also, as I said, applicable to other tragedies, including Oedipus, Antigone, Bacchae, Medea, and so on, and including a lot of comedies. Now, in short, before we move on to the following videos, I want you to keep in mind that the theatrical building, the skene, that was used by Greek plays, did not just represent a palace, a temple, a tent, a cave. It should also be thought of in symbolic and metaphorical terms. In every Greek tragedy and in comedies that drew on tragedy, this space had an enormous symbolic or metaphorical power. Of course, you will be familiar with modern theatre. I'll bring only just one example here, Ibsen's The Revenants or The Ghosts, where the space of the house that we see the dramatic action unfolding with all its dark secrets and its dysfunctional character and even the disease, that we see manifesting in one character towards the end of the play are actually elements of this, I would say, rather sinister and oppressive space. Now, on separate videos, as I said, I will analyze this in relation to Euripides' Bacchae, Oedipus, Sophocles' Oedipus, Aristophanes' Lysistrata, Aristophanes' Frogs, Euripides' Medea, Sophocles' Antigone, Aeschylus' Persians, and I will show how understanding the use of the skene interior helps us understand some of the most important themes of these plays. Thank you very much.